You're listening to the VMJPod's Employee Brand Series. I'm David Macciocca, and joining me for this special Sydney edition is Brie Mason. Together we're unpacking what's really working in employee brand today, from fresh ideas to actions driving real change inside leading organisations. Welcome to the VMJPod series, where we're unpacking employer brand. I'm David Macciocca.
And I'm Brie Mason.
And we are so excited to have Alex McVeigh here. How are you, Alex?
Good, how are you?
Good. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been working in the employer brand industry for over 15 years now. Started off as a marketer and then moved into employer brand back in the early days at Deloitte. I worked there for a few years, then moved overseas, worked at Deutsche Bank in London, so did some stuff internationally, which was really exciting. Then came back, was at Commonwealth Bank and led the employer brand team there for around 8 years or so, which was awesome. We got to do some great stuff, and I'm sure we'll cover a little bit of that today. And then most recently moved over to Alinta Energy, where we set up the new EVP. And just in very recent news, have launched my own thing. So I've set up a media company for female uni students, which is called She Graduates. So looking to help them move into the employment market, provide guidance and advice, and also help employers connect with that audience and increase their female talent pipeline.
I feel like we're with the original OG, 15 years in employer branding. That's quite some time. And that is the topic and theme we're going to be unpacking, how to attract talent, Gen Z talent, to your organisation, because things are shifting.
Yeah, they definitely are.
They are. Can you tell us about it? And obviously now we've always worked in the grad talent attraction space, and now this is an area you're really diving on into. What can you tell us about these kind of younger generations that are coming through? What does it mean for people like us?
Yeah, so I've always personally loved working in the grad space. I think a lot of people, from a recruitment perspective and an employer brand perspective, they always... it seems to be the area where the most innovation happens, where companies are willing to do things a little bit differently and to do some fun stuff. So for me, that was a driving factor to kind of focus my attention on this space. But I think we're at a real pivotal moment from a marketing perspective generally, and I think that has a huge... obviously, then that flows on into the work that we're doing in employer brand and how we might have to change and think about things. And I think that there's a few key things happening right at this moment that are going to really influence the way that we attract talent in the future. So, the two key things I'm really looking at are social media and how we're using that to attract talent, which isn't brand new, but I think the kind of intensity of which that is a key marketing channel is only increasing. Mm-hmm. And then, AI and how the use of AI is changing the way that we as employer brand professionals work. And so, I think that those are kind of the market trends. I think in terms of the way that our consumers, audience, talent are changing, it's really about a couple of things. Attention spans and expectations of what they are exposed to, and as consumers, what they expect. We know that attention spans are ever decreasing. People are willing to engage with longer form stuff, but it really has to be speaking to them. So that's probably one thing that I've really been thinking about. Again, not new in employer brand, but I think becoming more important. And the second thing is really around trust. And in this age of AI, there's a lot of, uncertainty about what's real and what's not, but also kind of this fake news, and the trust in traditional brands and traditional news outlets and that type of thing is really declining. And we're seeing this explosion in the influence. We're seeing an explosion in the influence of influencers and peer-to-peer marketing. And, I think that's going to be something that's really going to influence our space. And then finally, budget. I think it's on all of our minds, and people's budgets are generally being cut and squeezed. So how are we going to manage that, and what are we going to do with that in our space?
Yeah. We've had a bit to do with the grad space, and it is more dynamic than your traditional talent acquisition area. They are a bit more risk takers,
dealing with high volume, so they have to move quick. Campaigns are like 4 weeks. We spoke about building trust. How should organisations be thinking about building trust with Gen Z?
Look, I think it's about authenticity. So making sure, I think slick content is kind of on the way out.
What slick?
So just highly produced, where you can tell that it's gone through the brand machine, and it looks very shiny and perfect. I still think that there is a place for it, but I think in general, especially with this audience, that kind of stuff, again, that is a little bit more easily able to be replicated by AI is a little bit of a concern. So I think it's about that. I think it's about showcasing your people, which it always has been in the employer brand space. Yeah. So anywhere that you can get your people acting as advocates, of course, is going to build trust. And then it's about building that kind of third-party trust. So especially with the rise of kind of the no-click internet, where people are using AI as their number one, AI platforms as their search platform and asking questions, what you're seeing is more content being pulled through the likes of Reddit and other forums or Glassdoor, where it's a little bit more trustworthy, and it's peer-to-peer. So I think it's that. It's also about opening yourself up for questioning, and having that two-way dialogue.
So you're talking about geo there, moving away from SEO because the wind has changed. So people aren't on Google anymore. Is that what you're referring to? People are more focused on ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini.
Yeah.
So what are some of the search behaviours from graduates or Gen Z when they're jumping on these LLMs? What sort of questions do you think they're asking or they want to know about an organisation before they put their application forward?
Yeah, so I think it's probably just all of the questions that they would have traditionally asked their friends and family, who maybe careers fairs and that types of things. So I think it's just a difference in the way that they're looking rather than the questions they actually have. Things like, is this a good place to work? Or even, where is the best place to work in Australia? Where is the best place to work in my industry? Where is a good place to work for women, for young women, that type of thing. What's good about working at XYZ company?
What's really interesting about that is the marketing would hack it by indexing words on Google, but you can't do that at the moment. You need to create content.
Yeah.
You need trustworthy content, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that whole industry is just starting to really blossom, but I think you can hack it. It's just a different way that you do hack it.
Well, posting on Reddit or creating blogs that are compatible with the LLMs, I mean, they're content guzzlers, but they want third-party verification. So where we're playing in the employer brand space, telling stories, it's advocacy. LLMs love that.
Yeah.
So companies should be thinking about how they're getting their people more so on to be talking about their environment, because it's coming from an employee. It's not traditional branding, and then it's where it's being placed. Definitely.
And I mean, I think the impact of advocates, has always been the most powerful tool we can ever employ in employer brand. I always say if I was starting from scratch and I had absolutely nothing, I would just do and focus on advocacy. And so that's only becoming more critical rather than going anywhere in this new world.
Yeah. Where do you think, it seems obvious, but where do you think the content's been viewed, or where's the trusted place Gen Z are looking for content?
Well, I mean, I think obviously social. TikTok is the number one search platform for Gen Z.
That's crazy, right?
It's crazy. It's just so crazy. And so I think, obviously the social platforms are highly, highly trusted. I still think their personal networks and that kind of thing are really critical and will always remain the number one most influential factor when someone's looking for a job. But, you know, I think the trustworthiness of branded content, you know, careers websites and things like that is probably decreasing as the trustworthiness of social platforms increases.
You mentioned was around how social's always been there, but we actually need to be doing a lot more social. It's becoming a more kind of critical part of our attraction strategies and brand strategies. How do you see that shift? Like, where do we need to put more of our time and effort now, do you think, as employer brand functions?
So I think previously social media was more of a nice to have, and it showed that you're a bit innovative and kind of a bit ahead of the curve, and if you wanted to be doing something a bit different, it's not anymore. It's really table stakes. And I think if you're not there, especially with Gen Z, then your brand is basically invisible.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to say, though, that whilst we're talking about Gen Z and the focus is on Gen Z, these trends are happening across every generation, even up to the boomer level. You know, we're seeing that social first. Social is the place that people are spending most of their time online. It's becoming their trusted channel for everything, news, information, health information, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, whilst it starts heavily in the Gen Z, you know, as the focus, it's really critical that we're doing this for all of our audience. And, you know, we were just talking earlier about Gen Alpha and, you know, them being kind of 14, 15 years old now. You know, it's only going to be another step change, I think, in the way that they're actually using digital channels. So, you know, I think if you're not there, you probably have to be a little bit concerned that your brand is not necessarily going to be seen, and it might be a little bit relevant.
Yeah. It's been hard. I mean, I've been on the journey from one of the first organisations to use social media and talent attraction many years ago. And it's always been hard to get the organisation on board and comfortable with doing social, particularly now. I think this idea that we don't need it to be polished. We need it to be really authentic and real. That's hard for some brand teams to be comfortable with. How do people kind of get their organisation on board with then using new channels like TikTok? Because not a huge amount of corporate organisations are on TikTok or are using it effectively. How are we going to get there?
Always a challenge, and has always been a challenge. You know, I've been in big corporates. I know what it's like. Partly why I've kind of gone off in this new direction is that I think that, you know, there's a number of ways that we can think about it. Using third-party providers is one way that we can get around it. So working with the likes of, you know, Grad Connection, My Job, or, you know, influencers who will create this content on your behalf, share it on your behalf, but not necessarily on your own brand platforms, which is where a lot of the challenge seems to be, and also it means that you're able to get around a lot of your kind of brand guidelines and things like that. So I think that's one way that you can try to get around that. Another way is to really try and focus on some of the burning platforms. So, you know, Grad, for example, is always a great space to try this stuff. Yeah. Often companies can get a little bit more leeway when they're looking to do something different if they just try it out in the grad space. So, you know, maybe that's a way that you could try and do it and prove the results. But also if you think about things like, you know, the gender pay gap and the changes that are coming in the legislation there, and having a real burning platform to need to do things differently and to demonstrate how you're doing things differently is another way that you could provide a really strong business case as to why you need to try different things to attract talent that you might not have been able to tap into in the past. The other thing's probably budget. You know, this is cheap compared to what you're currently doing. And I think that that's going to be another thing that helps companies demonstrate the impact for a less cost is going to be something that's attractive.
Yeah.
So when I think of TikTok, I think people think that they need their video to go viral. So the editing side of things or the production side of things can take a little bit longer. It's not normal. You can engage with digital agency. They can come in and they can create the content. What are your thoughts on true authentic content versus the virality of a video.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point, actually, and I was just reading about this yesterday. Virality, especially in what we're doing, is not really the goal, I would say, you know, especially when you're looking to target a niche audience. So there's some really interesting data out there supporting the fact that smaller influencer communities actually provide a lot more engagement and value than reaching a larger audience. So what I mean by that is like these real niche audiences that might have, you know, 5 to 10,000 followers, but they're really targeted. Their content with that audience performs really well. And if you need to hire a really niche skill set, you're probably going to be able to find an audience that talks to those people. So having valuable stuff that speaks to a smaller audience that has that depth of engagement, you know, maybe if we're talking about video content, it's like a longer watch time or there's more engagement with that particular post, is far more valuable to us, especially in the world of employer brand, than having a video that's seen by 1 million people. Like, it's not really important at all.
So is it important for people to take action once they've watched the video, or is it okay if they just move on to the next video?
I think they will in about, like, what is it? How many seconds? Like 1 second?
3 seconds.
3 seconds?
No, you have to get their attention in 3 seconds.
Okay.
If you can get their attention, you can actually keep them for up to 3 minutes. But anyway, your question, do they need to take action? Well, I think that just comes back to kind of the marketing funnel basics, really, where it depends at which stage in the journey and the purpose of that particular content. So is this a brand building exercise, which I would say the vast majority of what we're doing on social media is? It's an early funnel stage exercise where we're looking to build that brand affinity with our organisation. Would I expect them to take action? Probably not in the majority of cases. I may do some lead generation content later on down in the funnel, but, you know, it doesn't work that you just go out and put a post and say, hey, apply for our job. Like, that's just not what social is for, or how it works. Job boards still do a pretty good job of that.
It's interesting because when you think about the virality side of things and then being okay with them not taking action, I'm assuming you want more eyeballs on the content. Is there a dilemma there?
I don't think you necessarily want more eyeballs. You want the right eyeballs.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm not really convinced that virality is something we should be aiming for in our industry.
And that's been the case, I think, regardless of social, which channel. We've been trying to do that. And obviously in our space, it is about being much more targeted. So I think it's the same applies in the social space. Yes, we could go viral. Well, so, wow, we got 1 million views of this, but so what if they're the wrong views, right? It's around deterring the wrong people and attracting those few relevant ones. So I think it's kind of, it's the same concept, just in a different platform, right?
And it's always been about that in our space. You know, how can we reach the people that we want to reach whilst not necessarily talking to everyone, because that's not what we're trying to do. And when you work for a big consumer brand, which some of this audience probably does, and we have, that can be a big challenge, right? Because it's totally different to what they're trying to do.
Yep.
If you're working for the likes of Telstra or Commonwealth Bank, they want to speak to absolutely everyone and not be excluding anyone. And so that means your message has to be very broad. We're doing the opposite. You know, we want to speak to a very small audience who are uniquely qualified for the roles that we need them for.
Yeah.
So that is a challenge.
Yeah. And as well, I think another concern with virality of like content that goes like crazy is the negative impact then of the trolling and the comments, and it can get nasty in TikTok. I've experienced, and I think when content goes well, you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah. And
it's hard for some corporate organisations to be like, oh, this is not good. And particularly when it's your real people that are putting themselves out there, I think, as the face of and trying to be really authentic, for them being attacked often as humans isn't nice. Like, organisations need to be wary of that. So I think it's a risk that some companies then kind of choose to avoid in going into some of these channels where things can get silly.
And I think that's a really good point. And I have also, that is a realistic concern that you could have. I think that that's probably another reason that you might consider wanting to use third-party influencers, for example. It does protect your people a little bit more. And there's some ways that you can kind of get around that. I think there's also the challenge of cringe. And, a lot of people are really concerned about, especially Gen Z.
Yeah.
People think, they're Gen Z, they're going to want to have their face all over social media.
They
don't. A lot of the time. And so mitigating some of these things is a bit of a challenge because, that cringe factor is real.
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends. Like from our experience, it really depends on the go-to-market to encourage grads who have just joined the industry on how you position it to them. Because if you make it part of their performance review, I can tell you they're absolutely going to jump into the
Where's
project.
Where's the authenticity in that, David?
No, there is lots of...
That's just the push, right?
It is the push.
It's
what's in it for them. Like you can talk about internal recognition or even external. Is that really going to cut it?
Yeah, I think that it's about what the content is, and going back to your point earlier around something being viral.
Yeah.
I think for something to be viral, I don't know, it's a bit risky. It's a bit more risky in a way, and it can be a lot more cringy.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if you're kind of going out there and saying, hey, do this in a professional way, because it doesn't have to be unprofessional. All of this stuff can still be professional.
Absolutely. I've seen some great professional content on TikTok.
Exactly. And so I think it's about the way that you position it with the talent that you want to include. And also it's allowing them to have a say and, some choice in the direction of what you're creating.
This episode is brought to you by VideoMy, the employee-generated content platform helping organizations tell their story through the voices of their people. Formerly known as VideoMy Job, VideoMy makes it simple to create once and repurpose everywhere. One employee video becomes blogs, quote cards, and social posts, all automatically edited, branded, and ready to share. Our AI-accelerated platform makes it easy to scale authentic storytelling, showcase your culture, and attract the right people. Ready to see what's possible? Visit videomy.co to learn more.
What are your thoughts on ad tech? What are your thoughts? How should companies be thinking about promoting content on TikTok? It's all well and good just to upload a video, but there's channels that you can pay for and audiences you can attract.
Look, I think you have to. I mean, really, organic content, it's important. And you do want to make sure that you're building up that organic audience. And as I said, if you've kind of got a smaller, very engaged audience, that's really valuable. But in order to grow that audience and to reach your target market, you have to be paying to play. It's just the way the platforms are set up. And also, why wouldn't you? They're so sophisticated. You can be reaching a huge passive audience that you couldn't reach through any other channel. And as we know, the vast majority of talent is often passive at any one point in time. And this is one way that you're able to get in front of them for very cheap.
What sort of budget do you think a company should tuck aside for advertising on say TikTok?
For paid social?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's a hard question.
I mean, generally, what would feel a little bit too small and about right?
Yeah, look, I think you would be surprised what you can actually get for your money. So very general terms, for maybe
we're not going to hold you to it.
I know, but for maybe like a $5,000 spend, you could be reaching at least 100,000 people on a frequency of probably between 4 to 6 times, maybe more. Mm-hmm. Depending on who that audience is, because, different audiences cost more or less to reach, but you can be quite targeted in exactly who you want to reach, and you can make those numbers quite big for a very small cost. And the way I like to compare it is to careers fairs. And there's a place for careers fairs, and I think that they're really important in that funnel. As I said, it's going to depend where you are, who you're talking to. There's considerations. But, you know, a company might spend between $2,000 and $5,000 just attending a careers fair. Add on top of that. And some. Merch, your time, all of that gear. And, you know, so it might be a $10,000 endeavour where you might go and spend a whole day. There might be 500 people there. Might be 1,000 a good day. And you might speak to 50 people, you know, realistically. You can't speak to 500 people. A lot of those people might not be your target audience, and you've spent $10,000 doing that. If you put $10,000 into paid social, you could reach your audience at a very low cost. You could be quite sure you're reaching who you want to reach, and instead of just being at, you know, one university, you're reaching every student at every university in Australia.
Do you feel like companies feel an obligation to be at these career fairs?
Yes. I think it's also what they've always done, for one. Yeah. You know, we were talking about this. It's like there's no it's easy. You've always done it. No one's asking questions.
You're not going to be challenged by that. Like, I'm not going to challenge you. Why are you going there? And why are you showing up there? And spending money in that way. Exactly.
And people are kind of reluctant to stop doing stuff, which, you know, is one of the biggest challenges, you know, in any job really, but, you know, especially in marketing in our world. I also think our industry is very much a FOMO industry in that if someone else is doing it, we better be doing it too. And so I think people are scared that they're going to have some sort of detrimental impact to their brand by not being there.
Particularly in the grad cycles, right? If you change a strategy and it doesn't work, that's a big impact. So it is a risk to say, if we stop doing this, what if we don't get the numbers this year?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, now, I don't want to say don't go to careers fairs, because I really do believe that there is a place for these things if it's really well thought about in an overall marketing plan, and you've really thought through what are the different touch points that you need to convert this audience. And you know, you really know that your audience is going to be there. But I just think about myself as a student and the young people that I know who are going to uni, holding down a part-time job, probably playing sport, have a pretty good social life.
Better than ours anyway.
Well, apparently, no, let's not go into that. But like, are they really going out of their way to kind of walk around and attend careers fairs? You know, and are they are they going to be there at the right time? Are they going to be free at the right time versus this on-demand content that is there at any day, time of the day or night that lives on, you know, and that you're getting that value from long term?
Yeah.
Got to question that.
Yeah. I feel like things have shifted, so people should be questioning where they should be placing their bets to attract talent. Because and what I've noticed, being pretty new into the grad recruitment space, is that there's so much collaboration across industries. All industry, they all want everyone to really win, and people are sharing concepts and new ideas. But certainly things have changed. It's much easier for people to apply for a position. Reneging still an issue. So the role of employer brand and communicating the functional, emotional, and social outcomes of a role within an organisation becomes really important, because you want people who you're committed to, who are applying for positions, who accept the position, to actually rock up and be employed.
Exactly. And I think that that's such a good point that you make, David, because it's not necessarily about applications, which is what the traditional measure has always been, you know, and that's kind of the feedback that you're hearing now. It's like, well, we've got enough applications. We don't need, you know, we're being overwhelmed with applications. Well, it's probably because they're applying at 10 times more places because it's easier.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about the relationship and making sure that they actually choose you at the end of the day. And that's the importance of this long-term brand building.
Multiple touch points
Over a long period of time that you can realistically keep up for that, 12 to 18 month plus cycle with this audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk to you all day, but any final questions?
Yes, there's one I'm wanting to jump into.
Okay.
You mentioned influencer marketing, essentially. It was around obviously using third parties to get over the hurdle of kind of creating your own TikTok content in-house, to tap into third parties. I think it's really important, particularly with younger audiences, because that's another really impactful way of building that credibility and trust, because it's younger people don't trust corporate organisations and what they're saying, but they'll trust someone else more. And so I think that's an awesome strategy to utilise, but how on earth do we start doing influencer marketing in the employer brand space? That's not easy.
Well, you can talk to me.
I wanted to do for years, but it's how. That's hard.
When we're talking about an influencer, can you give the audience an idea of what's an influencer?
Yeah, so it's like a third-party trusted platform. So essentially somebody who is an expert in that space that audience might look to. So there's this awesome lady, Soph Workbaby is her handle. I recommend everyone check her out if they don't follow her.
Workbaby.
Soph Workbaby. And basically she's an early careers early career expert. And so this is in the grad space, but it's kind of people who've been working maybe between 1 to 10 years, say, and she's giving advice about like how to do your performance review and how to get ahead in the workplace and little tips and tricks. Anyway, she's become quite a trusted go-to person for young people who are looking to get ahead in their careers. Partnering with somebody like her to then talk about why your company is a good place to work is what I mean by that. I'm trying to do the same thing in the grad space. So I see that there really is a need for a trusted third party who's going to provide unfiltered advice to this audience about how to find, apply for, and secure your dream grad job. And primarily that is the focus, but then have also that opportunity to have partnerships with organisations where, we can talk about why this is a good company to work for, why you might, as a female, want to consider this industry. You could also look to, experts, say, in the, technical spaces. So if you're looking for someone, around AI, there's obviously some influencers online who have a great community in that particular space. So it's really just trying to find anyone who can speak to your audience. Is what influence marketing is about.
Yeah. And at every company's disposal is people within their organisation as well who are doing the role and getting those stories out, which is really valuable for graduates who are considering applying for that role.
Yes.
Totally. I think that piece around influencer marketing is both external and internal.
Yeah.
So you can look to third-party providers or experts who have built this strong niche and know how to speak to this particular audience, or you can have your own people who've got those built-in networks. And again, advocacy, the number one channel that we can tap into. How can we give people the freedom and the support to actually go out and start talking, because nothing's going to be more valuable than that.
Yeah. Because I see my daughter who is on social media all the time, and these influencers, these young girls that she's following, we have to go out and buy every product that these girls talk about. And so you see in whether it be the makeup world, the clothing, you see this as a method that's really impactful with the younger generations around these influencers. So I think that's the next thing for us in employer brand, is really working out how to tap into and do this properly in our space in incredible ways, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's you're going to need to have, I know we're nearly at time, but you're going to need to have, brand safety top of mind, and that's why you're going to need to partner with people who really understand that. But I think anyone who can crack into this space is going to have a massive competitive advantage in terms of finding that niche talent and really being ahead of the competition in attracting those people.
Well, we've covered a lot. And it has been a really good topic, and I'm sure people can get in touch with you. You are on LinkedIn and pretty active.
I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Probably TikTok too.
TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Well, Alex, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.